Hey guys, so today's video is going to be on burst rotation. Now, I've kind of gone over this a little bit in some of my videos, but I still get a lot of comments and questions asking me like how to do the actual rotation and how to do a lot of damage as Shaman and like what I do in my videos to do a lot of damage. So I want to make a whole dedicated video on the burst rotations. So we're going to go over two main builds here. We're going to go over the main default build, which is using lava burst with flux melting, and then the second build is obviously going to be Stormkeeper. So here's our main meatball build. This is the one where we use flux melting. Flux melting is using frost shock, increases the damage of your next lava burst, but this does not need to be buffed by ice fury. This is just basic frost shocks can do this. So Ice Fury is very nice because it's not in the same spell school as all your other abilities. Like your main Lava Burst is obviously fire damage, your Earth Shocks, your healing, and all your CC and stuff is nature damage. And so this adds a nice little bit of frost damage for you. And on top of that, you could use this to juke a kick or something. And if you're not comfortable trying to juke a kick with like Hex or whatever, this is a nice ability to do so. So it's got more uses other than damage and part of the rotation. So now in order to do the main lava burst rotation, you always want to start off with your fire elemental, because your fire elemental is going to increase the duration on your flame shocks. And while you have your fire elemental out, your flame shocks are going to be ticking faster, doing more damage, getting some lava surge procs going. It's mostly just because of the timer. So you always want to start off with your fire elemental out. You want to get as many flame shocks as possible rolling out. That way you can increase your magma chamber stacks, but not necessary for the rotation, but it is recommended just because your earth shocks will hit harder in a smaller window. So start off with your fire elemental, get some flame shocks going, get your primordial wave going. And then when you're ready to finally burst, you want to try to use your ice fury or have this ready beforehand. You want to pre-buff your primordial wave with the flux melting, drop your sky fury, use your lava burst with your pet's meteor, and then here's where the interesting part is. You want to try to alternate. So you want to use like lava burst, earth shock, since we're almost capped. Use a frost shock, lava burst, earth shock, lava burst, frost shock, lava burst. Try to get that last one out, but it's hard because we're trying to talk and go over the whole rotation. So the main points here is you don't want to cap on Maelstrom. You want to try to get out those Earth Shocks as your #1 priority. Then you want to try to make sure you're getting out your Frost Shocks out of your Ice Fury buff, because you don't want those to run out. You want to try to get all 4 of those used. You should be able to. Like 90% of the time, you should be able to get all of your Frost Shocks out. The only times really where you can't is if you're getting CC'd or whatever, which isn't a big deal. It's not a big deal if you waste like 1 or 2 Frost Shocks. You definitely don't want to waste the whole stack of them. You want to try to get out as many as you can. Usually you should have one already used up for your flux melting before your burst, but again, you don't need to use the Ice Fury buff for your primordial wave burst. You don't need to, but it is nice to have Ice Fury ready, because as soon as your primordial wave burst is over, well, now the next part of your damage continues on, and that is also important because it's not necessarily your strongest window, but it's still a lot of strong, consistent damage. Because if you don't have Ice Fury already ready, now especially if you're spec'd into like Primordial Surge or Splintered Elements, because after you used all those lava bursts, now you have to sit there and cast your Ice Fury. Whereas if you already had Ice Fury pre-casted, you could be spamming lava bursts, earth shocks, your buffed frost shocks. You could be casting all those in that small window where you already created your burst. So you'll hit a lot harder in a smaller window if you already have it ready, but it's not completely necessary because it doesn't gain you a whole ton of value just casting it after, but it does make it easier, especially since you have to cast something. If people already see you starting to burst, they're going to pop defensives, they're going to try to CC you, they're going to do whatever they can, so already having damage ready to go is a lot more beneficial. And then something else you can do with this rotation as well is, say like you have 3 flame shocks already on, right? You got 3 flame shocks on. Now you could cast Primordial Wave on yourself. You don't even have to cast it at the target. So this is a nice stealthy way of using your burst without the enemy realizing what you're doing. Because if they see this massive green wave just fly across the screen, a lot of people know what that is by now, because Elemental is very strong. We're in a decent spot right now as far as being on the ladder. So a lot of people know how to counter Primordial Wave now. They know what Stormkeeper is, all that. And so if you can use Primordial Wave on yourself, that's less visual aid for the enemy to see. And now you can burst without them really recognizing or seeing what's going on. So this is a very nice way to hit them very hard and to try to get out a little bit more damage before they start popping defensives or they try to CC you or whatever. So that's a nice little trick. Also, you want to try to use your saltwater potion if you're in like a battleground or something before or with your Sky Fury. Generally, I like to use this after Sky Fury because this is obviously stronger than Sky Fury because it increases all of your damage done by 30%, not just your critical strikes. And it's also 10% higher even on your critical strikes. So saltwater after your Sky Fury totem, very, very strong potion, especially if you have berserking on top of that. If you have all of those buffs, you're going to just annihilate a whole team. So Stormkeeper, the Stormkeeper build is a little bit different. So now we're not running Ice Fury, we're not running Flux Melting, so now we don't have the additional Frost School, besides Frost Shock obviously, but we're only going to be using that for slowing really in this build. So our Primordial Wave Burst is going to be a little bit weaker, but we have the Stormkeeper to compensate for that. And if anything, it's going to be a lot stronger, but it's on a 1-minute cooldown and it's hard casted, so you got to be a little bit more careful with this. And not only that, but now you have to use more globals to benefit off this, because in order to maximize its damage, you want to use your Surge of Power rotation. And in order to do that, you have to use an Earth Shock before each Lightning Bolt. So the primary thing is before you start this burst rotation, you generally want to be almost capped on Maelstrom. I think the ideal number is like 82 or something like that. And so if you can get to around 82 or higher, you should be good. Obviously, the higher you are, the better, because you have to, you don't have to use as many lava bursts in between the rotation in order to get out like that second Stormkeeper with the Earth Shock buff. So again, the reason that's important is because you're trying to get as much damage in the smallest window as possible in order to get a kill. Because if you spread out all that damage over like a longer time, people have longer to react. They can use defensive, CCU, whatever. So the less time you spend getting out this damage, the better. So you want to try to be capped. Not only will that get your full rotation out, but now you also have more damage because now you probably have like max stack magma chamber like down here or whatever. This will make it even stronger. Now to do your full Stormkeeper rotation here, again, you want to make sure your fire elemental is out always beforehand. That way you can use your meteor and everything, because having them out as your first global is probably the best move you can do, because now your flame shocks are going to be ticking faster and longer again, just like before. But now you don't have to waste a global in between, so that way you get your meteor ready. So you always want to make sure you use your Stormkeeper and your Primordial Wave before you burst as well, and then you want to use like your Sky Fury, your saltwater potion, whatever after, because these last 16 seconds, your Sky Fury and your potion only last 15 and 12 seconds, and they're increasing your damage, so you want those increasing your damage as long as possible. So you want to start off with your fire elemental. You want to get your Maelstrom up. Okay, so we're around the number now, so we have enough. We're gonna use our Stormkeeper, our Primordial Wave, Sky Fury, Lava Burst, Meteor with your first Earth Shock, and then your Lightning Bolt, and then your second Earth Shock, and then your second Lightning Bolt, and then you can just continue on spamming meatballs. So a lot of buttons in a short window, a lot of globals to use. It's very easy to get interrupted. So you got to be able to be fluent with this. Practice maybe on some training dummies if you need to. Do whatever it takes, but get so familiar with this rotation that you can do it without like even looking at the screen. Casting your elemental should be second hand. You should always be casting out an elemental by now, so that shouldn't be part of it. The main thing is just making sure you got enough Maelstrom to begin your rotation, and then once you have those two main things already ready, then you can just do your rotation. The rotation, again, just Stormkeeper, Primordial Wave, then you get your Sky Fury, your Lava Burst, Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt, Earth Shock, Lightning Bolt. So just get that memorized, Practice it if you need to, do whatever it takes, but you have to do it in that order, otherwise you're going to be missing out on a lot of damage. If you don't get those earth shocks before those lightning bolts, you're going to be missing out on 2 extra overloads per Stormkeeper lightning bolt. If you don't get the Sky Fury down, you're going to be missing out on 20% crit damage. If you're running Sky Fury, I'm not saying you need to be running Sky Fury. I've honestly been getting kind of pissed off with Sky Fury because everyone just instantly kills totems now. And make sure your fire elemental's down so you're not wasting a global in between. You get that meteor hit, which hits for massive damage, and your primordial wave obviously before with your Stormkeeper. That way you have everything procced. So a couple things to note here before we end the video. Primordial Surge and Splintered Elements are pretty interchangeable. I like to run Primordial Surge more just because I like the guaranteed lava surges. But Splintered Elements is extremely strong if you can get it to proc appropriately. So if you use it on 3 targets, you can get basically a lust for 12 seconds. This is like basically every 30 seconds because with Rolling Magma, your Primordial Wave cooldown is usually about like 30-ish seconds. But you have to be careful with this because if the enemy healer is like a Holy Paladin or a Mistweaver or something, they're constantly dispelling your flame shocks. If you use your burst, not only are you going to be missing out on a lot of damage because now you just use your lava burst without any flame shocks on anyone with your Primordial Wave buff, but now you're missing out on this whole talent because now you're not going to be getting any haste. But when you do get this, it's extremely strong. It might help you get your Stormkeeper cast off faster if you decided to use Stormkeeper in between. Or it's just good because the additional haste will roll out more lava surges. You'll be able to just cast more abilities within a shorter window. So very, very strong. I run this a lot too. It's very fun in battlegrounds when you can get out like 100 fucking lava bursts and your haste is just going all over the place. But I think for like arenas and stuff, I like Primordial Surge just for the guaranteed lava surges, but doesn't really matter. Very strong talents either way. And then Echo Chamber here, this is a point that can be moved around quite a bit. Echo Chamber, you could put in Searing Flames, you could put in Power of the Maelstrom. The thing with Power of the Maelstrom is it's even more RNG dependent than like deeply rooted elements. Your Lava Burst has a 5% chance because we only have 1 point in it to cause your next 2 lightning bolts, so this will work for both your Stormkeepers, to trigger an additional overload. So it'll make your Stormkeeper burst even stronger if you can track this and make sure it's up before you use your Stormkeeper burst. So if you're really trying to like optimize the shortest possible window of damage, I would probably run like Power of the Maelstrom with Splintered Elements because you have all that additional haste. You got an extra overload on both your lightning bolts and you're just going to do some insane damage in a short window. But for general cases, maybe Searing Flames because you get some more Maelstrom generation, which also gives you some more Surge of Power utility. And then whichever one of these you want to run. But Overload is also nice because you get some extra overload damage on your Stormkeeper because of Surge of Power. And then obviously your Primordial Wave with Lava Burst generate a lot of overloads as well. So this is also nice. It's very hard to say like which point is better to put in where. It's more so your playstyle or what you like. But I kind of swap between all of those 4 different things a lot. And so that's another thing too, is try not to let anyone tell you like, oh, this tree is the best tree out there, you should be running this one. There's no like best talent tree. There's a lot of different things you can do. And that's what's nice about these trees now. At first, I was actually a person that didn't like the changes of the talent trees because I was like, well, there's just going to be like one main build and everyone's going to run that build. But surprisingly, maybe it's just with the elemental tree, there's a lot of different builds you can run that are pretty viable. The shaman tree is obviously a different story. You guys know how I feel about that already. But the elemental tree here is very nice. There's a lot of different viable options here, and they're all very strong. They're all very good. They're all very fun. So just keep that in mind whenever you look at someone else's tree and you're like, well, I probably wouldn't run that, or that looks kind of dumb, or that looks weak. But you know, maybe some are, but overall there's so many options. There's an infinite number of options here. There's probably even a build here that no one has ran yet that probably is the best, but without like simulating every single thing, it's really hard to say. So just run what you think is fun, and I hope this guide helped those of you out there that are still struggling with some rotation or understanding the rotation and why you have to use this rotation. That's another thing too, is like maybe you can copy this rotation, but to understand why is a whole different topic. You need to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what makes it strong. So if you're not already following me on Twitch, check me out at twitch.tv/metallurgy. And again, I hope this guide helped you guys out. If there's any questions or anything, or if you guys have any other ideas for videos that you guys want to see, let me know down in the comment section below. And until then, guys, I'll see you next time.